So you have to do a biblical interpretation assignment, and you don't know where to start. We can help. First, let's make sure you are in the right place. This tutorial is designed to help explain the most basic elements of the exegetical process and other types of biblical research assignments. This tutorial will also introduce you to some biblical reference resources, explain their differences, how to use them, and give suggestions of good titles to start with. The intended audience is students at Anderson University enrolled in Bible 2000 or Bible 2050. This is not for advanced students or graduate student exams. It should be noted that this tutorial should not take authority over specific requirements or learning goals of individual teaching professors, but instead is to serve as an additional learning resource. All project or paper requirements and restrictions are at the discretion of teaching professors and are subject to change. Make sure to examine your syllabus, assignment sheet, or class notes for details. Contact your professors with questions. Now, what exactly is exegesis? Well, it goes by several names. Some professors call it a biblical passage paper or interpretive essay. But the word exegesis is rooted in Greek words meaning to draw out. It is a careful analysis of biblical text. The goal of exegesis is to find meaning, significance, or relevance of a particular text in the Bible. For you, this means choosing a small passage, 1 to 20 verses generally, and examining all aspects of that text, so you can better understand what it meant when it was written, why it was important to write down, and how it is relevant and should be understood today, among other things. By doing exegesis, you are joining a conversation that has been ongoing for many centuries. You are not the first, will not be the last, and can never claim to be the most accurate interpreter of the text. But you can contribute your interpretation in a meaningful way, with help from trustworthy resources. So what are some general steps in biblical interpretation? Most often, the first step is choosing your passage. For some assignments, the professor will choose for you. Other times, you are given the choice. Be careful to select a passage short and long enough that you will be able to get the appropriate depth in the allotted page limit. You now need to read the selected text several times, as well as make yourself familiar with its surrounding section. Always read the entire chapter of a biblical book before and after the selected passage, if not the entire book itself, or even several surrounding books. This will help you understand its context in the most general sense. For the most basic level of biblical interpretation, the next step is to use your own critical thinking skills to try to figure out the context in a broader sense. Ask yourself questions about the passage and see how much you can answer. Who is the author? Who is the original audience? What genre or type of writing is it? Maybe law, history, wisdom, gospel, or even letter. Is there an obvious theme or lesson in the text? What is the time period? For example, was it before, during, or after the exile? Or was it before, during, or after the life of Christ? Now is the time to begin using other resources. Unless you are doing an assignment that specifically instructs you to use commentaries from ancient or historical time periods, it is important to remember to verify that your sources are modern, contemporary, and not otherwise outdated. These resources will provide information and critical analysis of the text and related issues. There are many different kinds of biblical interpretation resources that you can and should use. These range from the broadest to the very narrow. Some are also very specific about what kinds of information they contain. The most general source, and sometimes your first consideration, would be a study Bible. This does not get into too much depth and may not provide any information that you want to include in your paper, but it will give you a very good starting point. Also called an annotated Bible, this resource includes the entire text of the Bible and sometimes apocryphal works, with small notations at the bottom of the page. You can generally expect only a few sentences of notes per biblical verse or passage. Many study Bibles also include short essays at the beginning of each biblical book. Some notable study Bibles are the New Oxford Annotated Bible with Apocrypha and the New Interpreter's Study Bible. The next source to consider would be the general Bible encyclopedias and dictionaries. The word dictionary is used to mean many things in biblical resources, but here we mean the most general resource. Encyclopedias generally have longer essays on people, themes, and events as entries, whereas dictionaries have shorter entries that focus on definitions, use, and origins of words. These can come in general multi-volume sets like the Anchor Bible Dictionary or the New Interpreter's Dictionary of the Bible. They can also come in more specific topics or subjects with greater detail in those topics. For example, Women in Scripture is a biblical dictionary that will deal only with women and women's issues found in the Bible. And IVP's Dictionary of the Old Testament Pentateuch will only deal with people and issues from the 5 books of Moses. Bible atlases are another resource that have specific information. These include many maps, charts, timelines, photographs, and other images, along with descriptions of locations and events in the Bible. These can help with historical context. For example, one can see the different people groups in a given location before, during, and after a given time period. One can also trace the routes of various journeys described in the Bible, or notice how geography and climate are significant to biblical events. Some notable Bible atlases include the Macmillan Bible Atlas and the Oxford Bible Atlas. Concordances and word studies are 2 more biblical resources that have specific functions. A concordance is like a vast index of words and themes in the Bible. These can be a single and multi-volume production, but the biggest consideration is the language and translation of the text. The simplest concordances will use one translation of the text and only index words from that translation. A more advanced concordance may be in both the original Hebrew and Greek, with a separate section for the English translation, and index of translated English words. With these, you would look up the word in English, notice its Greek or Hebrew translation, and then look up the Greek or Hebrew word to find all passages that include that Greek or Hebrew word. Some notable concordances are Strong's Exhaustive Concordance of the Bible in King James Version and the NIV Exhaustive Concordance. Similarly, word studies focus only on the words of the text. The function of a word study is to explain the historical meaning of a word found in a passage from the Bible. Generally, there is an essay for each unique word found in the Bible, which goes into detail about the origin, meaning, use, gender, or other implications of that word. Word studies come in single-volume editions like the Westminster Theological Word Book of the Bible, and in multi-volume sets like the Theological Lexicon of the Old Testament and the Theological Lexicon of the New Testament. The last and most subjective kind of biblical interpretation resource is the commentary. These are the resources where it is most important to remember that you are joining an ongoing conversation. In fact, what you are doing in your own exegetical or biblical interpretation paper is creating your own small version of a commentary essay. Commentaries use hundreds of sources to analyze the meaning of passages from the Bible. Commentaries can come in various formats. A one-volume commentary will have fewer or less in-depth articles about each passage, sometimes by many different authors. 3 examples of this are HarperCollins Bible Commentary, Erdman's Commentary on the Bible, and the New Jerome Biblical Commentary. The most common is the multi-volume set, generally 1 volume for each biblical book, or sometimes a group of biblical books. In these sets, each volume may have 1 author, as scholars generally have a focus of expertise, perhaps the 5 books of the Pentateuch, or the Minor Prophets, or the Pauline letters. Some respected examples of a multi-volume set include the Anchor Bible Commentary, the Word Biblical Commentary, the New Interpreter's Bible, and Interpretation Bible Commentary. Some commentaries employ special focus, such as the Ancient Christian Commentary on Scripture, which explains how the Bible was interpreted centuries ago and is used for additional historical understanding. The most current biblical research is generally found in journals and can be accessed through online databases such as ATLA Religion Database. Here you can search for what is being written on a specific passage within the last few years, and it is a good way to make sure your writing has the most recent and contemporary understanding of the passage. Searching the database is advantageous because one can focus on a specific passage, for instance, Exodus 15:22 through 26, without the burden of finding information on that passage in the midst of an exegesis on the entire book of Exodus. If you are writing an exegetical paper, your conclusion will generally focus on implications of the chosen passage in modern times. It is here that the historical context, the intended meaning, and possibly the theological problem or situation that the passage was intended to resolve is examined from a modern perspective. These are all the things mentioned in the main body of your paper, already taken from various biblical interpretation resources. So, what does the passage mean to religious communities now, with understanding of current theological issues? Remember to include a bibliography or works cited section at the end of your paper, and always cite your sources throughout the body of your paper. Attempt to use a wide range of sources, keeping in mind what is needed and expected for your specific paper requirements. Remember, your professor sets the intended layout and design, and the requirements and restrictions for your paper, so make sure to examine those guidelines. Good luck! This tutorial was developed in 2009 at Anderson University by graduate intern James Bell, with assistance from reference librarian Barbara Hoover and religious studies professor Dr. Shane Kirkpatrick. In addition, syllabi and assignment guides from various professors at Anderson University and at other institutions were examined and considered.